There is a world in our solar system where nothing ever settles down, a place where the winds tear through the atmosphere at speeds that would make any hurricane on Earth look like a gentle summer breeze, where the pressure is so brutal it would crush a spacecraft like an empty can, and where the radiation is powerful enough to kill any living thing in a matter of hours. I'm talking about a colossus so enormous that it doesn't just dominate everything spinning around it. It does something that sounds impossible. It forces the sun itself to move through space. This is Jupiter, the largest planet orbiting our star, a gravitational machine so relentless that it dictates orbits, shatters entire bodies, and may be the reason whole worlds never got the chance to exist in the first place. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. This same giant that destroys is also the one that defends. It swallows comets, shoves asteroids away, and works like an invisible barrier, holding back threats that could have wiped life off our planet before it ever had a chance to begin. And that's only the surface of the story. After all, where do those impossible colors that paint its clouds come from? What hides beneath that ocean of storms? Why has the biggest storm of all been spinning non-stop for centuries? And why, being so gigantic, did Jupiter never manage to ignite like a star? Get ready, because we're going all the way down into this monster. We'll unravel its storms, trace its origin, and expose the secrets of a world that terrifies us, and at the same time, may just be the true guardian of everything we know. Jupiter lives far away, very far. If you leave Earth behind, cross the orbit of Mars, and push past that strip of rubble we call the asteroid belt, that's only when it finally comes into view. This world of gas circles the Sun at an average distance of roughly 778 million kilometers. In other words, about 5.2 astronomical units, which means it sits nearly 5 times farther from our star than we do here on Earth. And even lost in that frozen vastness, Jupiter remains a striking presence. On clear nights, it can become the third brightest point in the entire sky, outshone only by the Moon and Venus. But that glow is deceiving. It doesn't tell even half the truth about this planet, because Jupiter isn't just big. It's big in a way our minds can barely process. Its diameter is roughly 11 times that of Earth, and its mass, 318 times greater. To give you a real sense of what that means, imagine piling all the other planets in the solar system into one single stack. Well, even then, Jupiter would still weigh more than twice as much as all of them combined. A single planet carrying more mass than all of its neighbors put together. And when a body reaches that scale, it stops being just another resident of the system. It starts to command it. We grow up picturing the solar system as something simple. The sun sits still in the middle, majestic, while the planets obediently whirl around it. Pretty, tidy, predictable. Except reality is far less well-behaved. Jupiter carries so much mass that it doesn't orbit the sun exactly. And the sun, in turn, doesn't stay nailed to the same spot either. The two of them actually dance around a shared location, a balance point called the barycenter, which is nothing more than the center of mass between them. And here's the unsettling detail. That balance point isn't even inside the sun. It floats just above the surface of our star. Translation: Jupiter is so heavy that it manages to push and pull on the sun, making it wobble slightly through space. The other planets do add their bit to this cosmic tug of war, but none of them comes close to the weight Jupiter throws onto that scale. It's like watching a slow dance in which even the mightiest object in the system is forced to answer the giant's call. And if it can move the sun, imagine what it does to everything else. Jupiter's influence plays no favorites. It reaches, one way or another, absolutely every planet. Any asteroid unlucky enough to pass nearby rarely walks away untouched. Some get torn apart, others are kicked onto completely new paths, and there are those that simply don't escape. They end up trapped, captured by the planet's crushing gravity. It's no accident that Jupiter gathers a genuine crowd of moons around it. Today, there are more than 90 confirmed, and that number keeps climbing as telescopes grow sharper. Many of them were probably objects wandering through space until this giant lassoed them for good. But its power goes much further than that. There are scientists who suspect that, in a distant past, Jupiter may have annihilated worlds that were still forming, or prevented them from being born at all. And the most astonishing thing is that this gravitational arm keeps working even today. Not even Mercury, the planet glued closest to the Sun and farthest from Jupiter, is completely safe. Over billions of years, this giant's pull can slowly warp Mercury's orbit, bit by bit. In an absurdly distant future, that silent shove might be enough to fling Mercury into the Sun, or expel it from the solar system altogether. All of it caused by a planet sitting hundreds of millions of kilometers away from it. And here the story takes a turn almost nobody expects. Because Jupiter isn't only a force that flattens everything, it is, at the very same time, a force that saves. Without this giant standing guard right there in the middle of the road, the inner solar system would be a terrifying place. Long-period comets would cross our neighborhood with frightening frequency. Dangerous asteroids would follow far more unstable routes. And the odds of a devastating impact striking Earth would be much, much higher. Jupiter works like a kind of giant cosmic vacuum cleaner. It sucks in, redirects, or gives such a powerful shove to certain objects that it ends up hurling them out of the system, far away from us. In practice, it sweeps the path clean. And maybe, without this guardian sitting exactly where it is, the long and improbable story of life on our planet would never have had the chance to begin. That's why, when you turn your eyes toward Jupiter, you're not seeing just one more ball of gas floating in the void. You're staring at a force that, over billions of years, helped decide who was granted permission to exist and who was erased from the cosmic map. Now imagine it were possible to get right up close to Jupiter. The first thing you'd try to look for would be the ground, and you wouldn't find it. Because quite simply, there is no ground there. Jupiter has no solid surface to land on. What it has is an ocean of clouds, layer upon layer stretching across thousands of kilometers, spinning, colliding, ripping into one another in a whirlwind that never, ever finds any rest. But those clouds hold a surprise. Despite all their fury, the band we actually see is surprisingly thin, somewhere around 50 kilometers thick, made mostly of ammonia crystals, similar to the ones that appear on Saturn. So why is Jupiter so extravagantly colorful? The answer rises from the planet's guts. Chemical compounds heated deep in the interior climb all the way to the top of the atmosphere, and when they get up there, they meet the ultraviolet radiation streaming in from the sun. That reaction produces substances called chromophores, and they are the true artists behind those hypnotic bands of orange, brown, white, and red that slash across the planet from one side to the other. Except those bands aren't just decoration. Each of them is a battlefield. They spin at different speeds, and right along the border between one and the next, brutal turbulence is born, along with enormous storms and structures capable of lasting entire centuries. Among all these atmospheric wars, one of them steals the show completely: the Great Red Spot. We're talking about a storm so monstrous that the entire Earth would fit inside it, with room to spare. It was already being observed back in the 17th century, and it has never vanished since. A practically eternal hurricane, spinning without pause in a world where chaos is the only law. But not even the Great Red Spot is as immortal as it seems. As the centuries pass, it has been shrinking. And its color isn't fixed either. Sometimes it boils in an intense, furious red. Sometimes it fades to an almost pale tone. The exact origin of that coloring still puzzles scientists. But the most widely accepted explanation points to the same culprit that colors the rest of the planet: chemical reactions triggered by the sun's light. And as if one colossal storm weren't enough, Jupiter decided to manufacture another. Between 1998 and 2000, 3 smaller storms drew close, collided and merged, giving rise to a new structure that earned the nickname Red Spot Jr. Smaller than its older sister, but no less fierce for it. It survives to this day, orbiting the planet and narrowly dodging a head-on encounter with the giant beside it. And that's what's frightening about Jupiter. There, Storms don't just appear and fade. They grow, they transform, they crash into one another, and they can live for generation after generation. Now suppose you could push through all those clouds and simply keep descending, deeper and deeper. You wouldn't hit solid ground. You wouldn't find seas. You wouldn't come across anything that deserves the name of surface. What exists down there is a slow and strange transformation. The gas gradually turns to liquid, and the liquid turns into something that defies our imagination. As you sink, the pressure spikes in a way that's almost incomprehensible, climbing to thousands, then millions of times anything we experience on Earth. And it's in that inferno of force that hydrogen, the simplest element in the entire universe, begins to behave in a completely unexpected way. It stops being that light, invisible gas, becomes a dense liquid, and then, deeper still, transforms into metal. That's right, a metal. An entire ocean of metallic hydrogen, capable of conducting electricity, filling up an enormous slice of the planet's interior. And beneath all of it, there's still something science hasn't truly cracked. A core, maybe made of rock, maybe a mix of ice, maybe something so exotic we can't even name it. The plain, hard truth is that we aren't able to reproduce these kinds of conditions here on Earth, and that's exactly why the heart of Jupiter remains one of the greatest mysteries in the whole solar system. And the interior isn't the only thing exaggerated about this planet. Even the way it moves seems to defy common sense. Jupiter is the undisputed champion of rotation speed. No other planet spins as fast as it does. A full day there lasts only about 10 hours. Think about that. A gigantic world, far larger than Earth, whirling at a speed so insane that it ends up flattened at the poles and bulging out along the equator. But there's more. Because Jupiter isn't solid. Not every region of it turns at the same rhythm. The areas near the poles take a few minutes longer to complete a rotation than the regions at the equator. The result is a messy, hard to predict, almost living behavior. It's as if every piece of the planet followed its own clock, all at once, inside a single body. And maybe the most fascinating question of all is this one. If Jupiter is so enormous, and if it's made basically of the same hydrogen that fuels the sun, why on earth did it never ignite like a star? Here's the detail a lot of people don't know. Stars don't simply catch fire. A star is born when the pressure inside its core becomes so absurdly high that the atoms themselves begin to fuse into one another, releasing gigantic amounts of nuclear energy. And that's where Jupiter falls short. However much mass it piles up, it still isn't enough to switch on that engine. To ignite as a true star, Jupiter would need to be somewhere around 75 times more massive than it already is. In other words, it came close. It has the right raw material, but it stopped halfway there, falling far short. It's a sun that never managed to be born, a failed star drifting forever through the dark. And this giant's oddities still aren't over. Few people imagine it, but Jupiter has rings too. They have none of that grand spectacle of Saturn, it's true. They're 4 wafer-thin structures, so faint they almost slip past your eyes, made of dust and fragments, gliding in silence around the planet. But Jupiter's real invisible phenomenon is another one, and it's frighteningly powerful. We're talking about the magnetosphere, a magnetic field so intense that it's the strongest in the entire solar system, roughly 14 times more powerful than Earth's. And it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's born from exactly that ocean of metallic hydrogen hidden in the planet's interior, a force of such colossal scale that it rivals, in proportion, phenomena we usually associate only with the sun itself. That energy doesn't stay locked inside the planet. It spills over, wraps around Jupiter completely, and turns the space surrounding it into one of the most merciless environments anywhere in our cosmic neighborhood. A world with no ground, with seas of metal, with days that pass in a handful of hours and ringed by invisible forces capable of dominating everything around it. And even so, that's only what's happening inside it, because out there, orbiting this colossus, an entire universe is waiting. Around Jupiter, it isn't just a handful of loose rocks spinning. There you'll find practically a solar system in miniature. Dozens upon dozens of moons, some tiny and misshapen, others genuine worlds in their own right. And 4 of them stand out in a way that's staggering. Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. These are the so-called Galilean moons, bodies so remarkable that if they sat anywhere else in the solar system, each one would easily be classified as a planet. Ganymede, for example, is larger than Mercury itself. Sit with that for a second. A moon bulkier than an entire planet, silently circling a giant even more overwhelming than it is. But don't be fooled into thinking this is a peaceful place to visit. Wrapping around Jupiter is a belt the eyes can't see, a radiation field so ferocious that no human exposed to it would survive for long. And Io, the closest of them all, plunges straight into that lethal zone. Every single day, it's bathed in doses of radiation capable of killing, in a setting where the very idea of habitation loses all meaning. And here lies an almost poetic irony. The very same force that makes Jupiter so deadly is also the one that gives rise to some of the most breathtaking spectacles in the whole solar system. That monstrous magnetosphere captures particles hurled out by the sun and channels them toward the planet's poles. The result is gigantic auroras, curtains of light shimmering and rippling in a world where absolutely everything seems to exist beyond scale. And that same influence, so dangerous on one hand, protects on the other. It embraces Jupiter's moons, wrapping several of them in a kind of invisible armor against the fury of the solar wind. It's this contrast that makes Jupiter so mesmerizing, a silent guardian that, even while reigning over disorder, helps hold a certain balance across the rest of the system. And maybe that's the greatest irony of them all. The most violent planet, the most extreme, the most terrifying of all, may be exactly the one that cleared the way for our own existence. So, the next time you look up on a dark night and spot that steady, bright little point high above, remember one thing. You're not looking at just a planet. You're staring at a giant that shapes destinies, that mocks our understanding, and that still hides mysteries science has barely begun to scratch. And the more we learn about Jupiter, the clearer it becomes that the universe is far stranger, far more dangerous, and, at the same time, far more breathtaking than our imagination ever dared to dream. But this roaring giant isn't the only world in our solar system hiding secrets on an impossible scale. Far out at the frozen edge of everything, another giant spins in near total darkness. A deep blue world lashed by the most violent winds anything in the solar system has ever produced. That world is Neptune, and it's exactly the one I take you to in the last video here on the channel. To check it out, just click the screen and it'll pop up right there for you. See you in the next one.